Okay. Truth values of the and in the or statements. Turns out when you put together statements, well, think about it. If I have an and statement, what it amounts to is, P is a truth statement, a statement. So it can be true or it could be false. What about Q? Well, Q could be true, could be false. And do they have to be true and false at the same time? No. So I'm going to have these interactions between the two statements. How does that work? Well, it works differently for and than it does or. So that's what we're talking about now. The interaction of what happens when I put two statements together as an and statement or as an or statement. We'll start with the and, okay? The way we'll kind of approach this is by an example. Let's say I have a job opening, and to be eligible for the job that we're talking about here, job number 1, a person must P, be be over 21, and Q, be a college graduate. Okay? So yeah, this is how we'll kind of see how and works. Because we're going to have several people come in and see if they're eligible or not. And we'll just kind of put this in a table format. Okay, person number 1 comes in, and person number 1, they're over 21, so P is true, and they are a college graduate, so Q is true. So are they eligible for this position? Well, obviously, they satisfied both, so they are. Okay? So the and statement is true in that case. So if P is true, Q is true, obviously the and statement for those is true. All right, person number 2 comes in, and true, they are over 21, but they're not a college graduate yet. It's false, Q. What about their eligibility? Are they eligible? If they're over 21 but they're not a college graduate? No, they're not, because it says and, doesn't it? You must be over 21 and a college graduate. You have to be both of them. So the and statement here is false. See that? You with me on that? All right, person number 3 comes in. False, they're over 21. True, they're a college graduate. Are they eligible? Still not eligible, are they? Because you have to be both. And then person number 4 just comes in off the street, not over 21, not a college graduate. Are they eligible? Obviously not eligible. All right. Okay, so just kind of a roundabout way to show you how the and works. For and to be true, what has to be the scenario here? Both of them have to be true. Both of the component statements, P and Q, the parts, the component statement. For and to be true, both of them have to be true. If one is false or the other is false or both of them is false, then and is false. For and to be true, both component statements have to be true. That's the rule. Okay? For and to be true, both component statements have to be true. Make sense? Yeah. And both have to be true. By the way, before I erase it here, this little format right here, it's called a truth table, and we're going to be doing several of those along the way. starting now, okay, and going basically through this whole chapter. But that's what a truth table is. And by a truth table, we just mean listing all the different scenarios of true and falseness, and then the actual statement over here that given the truth values. So that's our first little truth table there. So that's and. What about or? Let's talk about or. All right, so we're doing the or statement. The symbol is the V shape, but let's say for job number 2, we got another job opening here. To be eligible, a person must let's just say a person is P, a college graduate, or Q, have 3 years experience. A little different, isn't it? So the person's coming in either have to be a college graduate or have 3 years experience. That's a little different than the and, isn't it? Okay, so let's go through the scenarios like we did with the and statement. Again, it's the V shape for or. Just use that. All right, so let's go in the same order. Person number 1 comes in. Hey, they're a college graduate, and they have 3 years experience. Are they eligible? They are eligible, aren't they? That person would be eligible, right? What about person 2? What was 2? 2 was true on the first, false on the second. So true, they are a college graduate. False, they don't have 3 years experience. But are they eligible in this case? Yeah, it's a college graduate or 3 years experience. So if they have the college graduate, they graduated college, they're eligible, aren't they? So this would be true right here. They're eligible? Okay. What about person 3? Person 3, it's false, they're a college graduate. True, they have 3 years experience. Does that still meet the eligibility requirements? They're not a college graduate, but they have 3 years experience. Are they eligible? They're still eligible, aren't they? Because it says college graduate or 3 years experience. If I have 3 years experience, I'm eligible. But what about the last? False college graduate, false 3 years experience. Is that person eligible? No, you got to have one of them. Okay. All right. So this is how or works. How would you summarize that? Well, or is true in these 3. So for or to be true, well, just one of them has to be true. Now, if both of them are true, it's true. But for or to be true, just one of them has to be true. If one of them's true, then or is true. If one part is true, then the or statement is true. Maybe not the best phraseology there, but that's basically what it is. Or to put it another way, what's the only way or is false? The only way the or statement is false is if both the parts are false. Okay, so there's different ways you can put it. So or is not as restrictive, right? It's not as restrictive as the and. For and to be true, both of them have to be true. For or, just one of them has to be true. Okay? All right. So again, notice here the truth table. Now, for a truth table, like I said, you want all the scenarios listed. This is, and as you can see, this truth table is a lot like the other truth table except for this column, but notice there's 4 lines here. If you have P and Q statements in a truth table, you're going to have these 4 lines. In other words, this part over here on a truth table if it's P's and Q's, it's always on this side looking like this. True, 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 false, false, true, false, false. Now, this side will change up because of the statements being different, but yeah, that's what a truth table looks like. So that's what we're going to do. 2 more examples of truth tables, and that'll be it for now anyway. All right, so let's do a truth table for P or not Q. Okay, truth table for P or not Q. Well, if we're going to do a truth table, like I said, it always starts the same. If we've got P's and Q's or just 2 statements there, you do P, Q here, and then the actual statement over here. And then you're going to have the 4 lines. P and Q, so it could be true, 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 false, false, true, false, false. Yeah, the truth table, you need to list every possible scenario, and these 4 will do it for P and Q statements. Okay? Of course, the little problem here is this is a not Q instead of Q, because we've already done P or Q. This is P or not Q, though. All right, let me show you this. May not be totally necessary on this one, but here's how I like to work these. I like to see it because we'll get more complicated statements and 3 or 4 different parts, and it just helps, I think, to see each part here listed out underneath the component parts. All right, here's what I mean. Under P, I'm just going to make a copy of the P column. So it's got true, true, false, false. And then underneath the not Q, what does that mean? The squiggly Q. Negation of Q. So if I put its parts down here, what does that mean? Well, it's just going to mean the opposite of this, right? This means not Q, opposite of Q, so it's just the opposite of the Q column. So it would be down the line false, true, false, true. With me? Make sense? So I like to see them over there. I mean, I could maybe get by without here, but I like to see them because now I want to OR those together. And I'm just going to put some of them, go ahead and put it out here, but sometimes you don't have the room to do that. So I'm just going to put the resulting OR of those together right in the middle. So if I OR these 2 together, what happens? True or false? What value does that have? Well, it's an OR. And how does OR work? Now it's OR. OR is true if one of them is true, isn't it? It's the AND that's the restrictive one, where AND you have to have both of them true to be true, but OR, just one of them true has to be true, right? So true or false is true here. Okay? True or true, obviously that's true. If both of them true, it's true. Just one of them has to be true, so if both of them are true, it's still true. False or false, well, neither one of them's true, so that one's false. And then false or true, that's true. Okay? And so really, you can mark these out. This is really the answer that you're seeking for that column, that part. Okay? All right. So we're going to do several more of these as we go along. Let me do one more here with you. The book on that one? All right, so let's do the truth table for this one. Parentheses Q and not P or P. All right, so this one has multiple parts, but it's still just P's and Q's. So again, this part over here just stays the same, P's and Q's. I want true, 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 false, false, true, false, false. And then over here, let's put our statement, Q and not P or P. Well, this works just like we've always seen. What do we do first? Parentheses first. But let me go ahead and put underneath each what each truth value would be line by line. All right. So Q, that just means a copy of the Q column. So that'd be true, false, true, false. Not P, well, that's the opposite of the P column. So that would be false, false, true, true down the line. And let's go ahead and do this one. We won't do it till later, but let's go ahead and do it. So that would be P, so that would just be a copy of this column. True, true, false, false. Okay? Now, like we were saying, parentheses first. So we're going to do this one first. We're going to AND these two together. Right? That's AND. So in the first line, what have I got? I've got true and false. How does AND work? AND has, that's the restrictive one, right? It has to both be true for AND to be true. So true and false would be false. False and false would be false. True and true, that would be true. False and true would be false. Mark these out. We'll focus on that. With me? Okay. Now, I need to take this result and then OR it with these, right? So I need to OR these two together. Because that's what this one is. Right? So I did the AND, now I got to do the OR. All right? And again, you could put it here, some choose to put it over here, whichever, it doesn't matter. But OR, all right, so we got these two, false or true. What would that be? That's true. Why is it true? OR is true if one of them's true, if at least one of them's true. False or true, also true, or true if one of them's true. True or false, and then false or false, false. And really, this right here is the answer. And in the back, they wouldn't even write the whole thing. The answer in the back would be true, 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 false. They don't even do the whole truth table, but don't let that fool you. They're doing the whole truth table. They're just saving their space. Yes, question. Will it always be three things true if it's OR, and one true if it's AND? Not necessarily. Most of the time, probably. Hadn't really thought about that all the way through, but I would guess, because here's the thing. Since you asked that, sometimes actually all these can turn out to be all trues, or sometimes they could be all falses. So it probably depends on how complicated these others are. You know, if you got two ORs or two ANDs. I mean, if you get two ORs, it's going to be, you're going to have a lot of trues in there. So, rule of thumb, yeah, probably, but not always. Okay, let me mention one more thing before I let you go. This is actually really an easier problem. You don't have to go through a whole truth table for this. What it is on the, I think it's actually probably the first few problems, or some of the first problems in the assignment here. But what they'll do is they'll give you a scenario. Let's say if P is false, Q is true and R is true. What is the truth value of the statement Q or not P and parentheses R and not Q? Okay. All right. That looks like a huge problem, doesn't it? Well, first point is you don't have to go through the whole truth table. This is just saying for this scenario here, for these truth values, what does this one come out to be? In other words, I'm just going to plug in what each one is. For example, Q is true, then that's just, I've just arbitrarily chosen Q is true. I could have chosen just as well Q is false, but I chose Q is true. So I'm just going to replace the Q by true since that's what that tells me. Then I'm going to OR that with not P. That's the negation of P. So what would that be in this case? Well, since P is false, the negation of P would be true. Yeah. You see what I'm saying? And then R is true, and the negation of Q, which is, since Q is true, that would be false. You see? You just plug in the values based on what they give you. This will be given to you. So you don't have to go through the whole truth table thing, is what I'm saying. You can just do what it tells you. They're telling you one particular case. And then you just follow the order of operations there. Do the parentheses first, true or true. Well, that's true, right? True and false. What would that be? Be false, wouldn't it? Because that's and both of them have to be true for it to be true. So we got that there. And then we do the last one, the and in the middle, true and false. Well, that's the same thing we just had, wasn't it? That's false. Okay. So that's all they're doing. I mean, you got a 50-50 shot at it anyway because it's either going to be true or it's going to be false, but you just follow the progression there. Okay? So there's some like that. Okay.